It's time for the Brouhaha Sports Show. Brouhaha Sports with award-winning sports writer Dale McKee and co-host Marshall Wood. Talking sports with the legends of the game and famous sports personalities. Brouhaha. Now to Marshall and Dale with tonight's guest.
Good evening, everyone. Evening is what I was trying to say. I said evening. But anyway, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brouhaha. Marshall Wood and Dale McKee here, sitting down, ready to talk a little sports. Man, there's a lot to talk about, man. These playoffs getting set up and all this stuff. These final weeks. Man, what a... I tell you what, I saw somebody play this weekend I hadn't seen play.
Who's that?
Texas Tech and Indiana. I watched them both play. Mm-hmm. And have you been watching those guys?
Well, I'll be honest with you. I saw glimpses of them because I was in Starkville the weekend.
Yeah, that's true. You were busy with the Mississippi High School.
Yeah, but I did. You know that they had the TVs on in the press box, yeah. but I couldn't get into the flow of the game. You're just checking the score out, you know.
Yeah.
But I was very impressed. All I can tell you is that if Indiana beat Ohio State, that's got to be impressive. I mean, this is a school that's never been a football. You know, they're a basketball school for 100 years, and of course, because that's how their kids grow up down there. You know.
Listen to this. Ohio State's roster filled with highly rated recruits, including 4 5-star players and 10 former top 100 recruits. Indiana's starting lineup features 14 players who were ranked outside the top 1,000 as high school. They weren't even in the top 1,000. The Hoosiers will start 8 players who had no recruiting stars. None. While Ohio State has only 1 starter below a 3-star. How you like them apples? A bunch of nobodies. And who's the best coach in football?
Well, right now, I'd have to say this Kurt...
Spaghetti.
Spaghetti.
Yeah. He's a monster, man. I mean, how can you take a bunch of nobodies and blow everybody? I mean, I love it, man.
Hey, they're not beating people. They're like our Heidelberg Oilers up the road here. They are destroying folks.
It's crazy.
Now, that was their probably closest game of the year by a large margin.
Yeah.
Because I've seen some scores. I think Illinois got a pretty good football team. They won 8 games. And I think they scored 70 on them just to show them that, hey, we belong in the top 10.
Cincinnati doesn't mess around. Their quarterback, when he ran, did you see this? Did you see him go to that microphone after that game? He was so, I'm just going to say, full of the Holy Spirit of God. I'm just telling you. Mm-hmm. I'm a Christian. I believe in all that. I believe in the Holy Spirit and the indwelling of Him. And that kid hit that microphone, man, he was lit up like nothing. It wasn't earthly. He was crying. He was talking through tears. He was talking about it was amazing. I love it. I tell you what, it's hard not to be a Hoosier fan.
Well, if these guys haven't voted for the Heisman, which I think is going to be released Saturday night, I think that kid might have a chance if not everybody's voted.
Well, that's true. And that outing that he had the other night, was pretty impressive. Here's another, just while I'm on this, some information I gathered up that I thought it's not a pattern, but Texas Tech, saw them play. They got a pretty good football team. $25 million NIL last year. $25 million. They spent $12 million on transfers. I mean, it's a money game now. Mm-hmm. It's not the same. Mm-hmm. And you look at teams like Indiana hadn't won a Big Ten since 1945. And then here we go now with this bunch of Texas Tech. I don't know if they've ever won anything, but they winning now. It's really interesting to watch.
Mike Leach had them winning back when he coached out there because, I don't know if you remember, they played Ole Miss in a home and away series, and Texas Tech beat Ole Miss twice, and one of them was when Eli was a senior, and that was one of Ole Miss's 2 losses. And then they also met up with Ole Miss twice in the Cotton Bowl.
Oh, so that's like I remember some of that.
So, I think Charlie Britton would remember that.
I bet he would.
We didn't get Charlie on the thing. I think he went out to that ball game, Texas Tech, and they played in the Cotton Bowl Eli's senior year. Sure did.
I was talking to a buddy of mine on the phone this morning. We talk pretty regular, named James Rat Williams. He's a big Tiger fan, bless his heart. But anyway, he was telling me this morning that part of the contract that Kiffin's got with LSU, LSU has to pay Lane Kiffin for each playoff game Ole Miss wins. You aware of that?
That's a very greedy person.
Now, if Ole Miss beats Tulane, then LSU's got to write Lane Kiffin a check for $250,000. And each playoff game they win, the ante goes up. And LSU has to pay when Ole Miss wins. They got to write a check to Lane Kiffin. If they win a national championship, LSU's got to write Lane Kiffin a check for $1 million. How
about that?
How you like that? Kiffin's got them, don't he?
Yeah. Ole Miss, that's a unique situation to me, the Ole Miss draw in the bracket. I know people are, fussing about Notre Dame making it, and it is the system itself why they're not in. And I heard Notre Dame is not going to a bowl.
They're not.
Because they're sore losers, I guess. But I like Notre Dame. I grew up watching Notre Dame football because it was on more than anything else.
It's the only thing we had to watch.
Yeah, and I remember Channel 7 down in Hattiesburg used to have to do the highlights on Sunday. But Ole Miss has got, they're playing Tulane in the first game. They've already played Tulane.
Makes no sense.
You know who they play in the second game? If they beat Tulane? Georgia. Hadn't they already played Georgia too?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Why you match them up against people they already played?
Why you're saying? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We were talking about that this morning again with my buddy Rat and I about the picking. Got to bring the computers back and get people out of it. Let the computers pick them. They don't get personal. They take it just by the facts. How you feel about that?
Well, I'm like this. If they want to do the picking and they say, okay, Alabama loses, well, we're not going to hold that against Alabama for losing the conference championship game if they get into it, okay? Well, let me tell you something. If they're going to do that, why don't they just pick it the week before the conference championships? And then you won't penalize anybody.
Yeah.
Just, okay, this is who's going to go to it.
Take the conference championships out of it.
Yeah. Well, I think, I think Ole Miss was in a great position sitting at home at 11-1.
Yeah.
Hey, we're just going to sit here, let Alabama go over and get beat and get their third loss and get them out of the way, I thought, I thought most people that won over the weekend, I know Duke screwed things up for Virginia. If Virginia would have won, they would have been in before. No, nobody would have been in from the ACC, I don't think. Because the ACC messed up. Because they should have found a way to get Miami in their conference championship game. That should have never happened, Duke, and because Miami was tied with Virginia for second place, and for some reason they sent Virginia. I don't know, maybe it was head-to-head, I don't know. But there was like 5 teams tied at 6-2 in that conference, and Miami lost 2 conference games. So I don't know why Miami thinks they deserve to be in over Notre Dame, even though they beat Notre Dame in the first game of the year. But
the pollsters seem to agree with Miami.
I understand that, but
Miami probably
only
thinks the
because
same thing the pollsters
they
do.
said it came down to the head-to-head.
Yeah.
But if you're Notre Dame, why are you going to go play Texas A&M and Miami to start the season in the future? Why don't you go out there? Why don't you go out there and play Mississippi Valley?
The Blind Sisters of Charity. Stop all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's got to stop. We were talking about that at the office this morning. My son was talking about that. Why would you schedule anybody?
Well, see, the SEC is
Fixed to go to 9 games.
9 games, and they still have to play a Power 5 school for a 10th game. Okay? Well, that's not going to help any SEC teams. That means they're only going to have 2 people they can invite to their house to beat the crap out of the first 2 games of the season. My mother, she's listening. Mom, I didn't mean to say
I'm sorry.
that.
I'd like to apologize to you. He doesn't.
I didn't mean to say that. I'm sorry, Mom. Please take that back from me. And please remember me at Christmas.
Let me throw this at you right quick.
All right.
We fixing to have to get out of this segment and get to our guest, but you talk about everybody thinks the SEC is always high and mighty. I always do. Have you ever considered the TV contracts? Listen to this. The Big Ten gets $7 billion over 7 years. The SEC gets $3 billion over 10. And the SEC thinks they're the big dogs.
Well, now those contracts were the Big Ten's was done after when UCLA and USC came in, that's when they redid those. I think the SEC's contract was done a couple years before Texas and Oklahoma.
All I'm saying is they're getting a whole lot more money than the SEC's getting. Who's our guest for tonight?
I guess for that.
Yeah.
Marty Lamb.
Marty Lamb. Tell me about Marty Lamb.
Marty Lamb is a scout for the LA Dodgers, but we're gonna find out more for him. He coached back about 30 years ago at Southern Miss under Hill Denson.
Mm-hmm.
He was the head baseball coach at Bay Springs High School
Come
at
on.
one time.
Oh.
And now he's a scout for the world champion LA Dodgers.
Well, I tell you what, let's don't waste any time. Let's take a break to hear from one of our sponsors, and Dale, I'll be back with tonight's guest, Marty Lamb, right after this commercial break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Marty, welcome to the Brouhaha. And so we're just delighted to have you. You know, it was strange how I even came across your name. I was looking through some old newspapers for a friend of mine because I do a lot of research being a sports writer. And so I just saw this thing. Bay Springs baseball coach is hired by Hill Denson down at Southern Miss. And I just said to myself, I wonder whatever happened to that Marty Lamb. I was thinking, okay, maybe he went on to college or something like that. And a lot of guys back in that day, you know, they changed occupations, you know, because of the pay scales and things like that. So I was just wondering, and all of a sudden it pops up, you know, Dodgers and all this. And why don't you tell us about your journey? Where are you from? How you got Mississippi connections and got to Bay Springs and Southern Miss, and then what has happened after that? Okay.
All right. Well, I'm a Colorado boy, raised and grew up in Colorado. Went to the University of Northern Colorado, and y'all might know this name. There's a coach named Ron Polk. And he did a convention at Northern Colorado for a bunch of high school baseball coaches. And I drove him back and forth to the airport. So on the way back, I said, Coach Polk, I would do anything to be a graduate assistant or whatever, you know, at Mississippi State. And he says, well, it's funny. He says, we've got one spot left open. And then they would have baseball graduate assistants, but they would also have the graduate assistants through the physical education department. So or the kinesiology department. So I worked through the kinesiology department, and that's where I had my graduate assistantship, taught some classes, and then I would coach baseball after that. So I was able to spend a year with Mississippi State. Here I was coming from Colorado, and that was a whole different ballgame once I got to Mississippi State. I mean, obviously playing in the SEC and all the different teams that we were playing, and it was a dream come true, that's for sure. That was the year that the NCAA did away with graduate assistants, because you could have done, or the guys that had done it before had done it for 2 years. And so I only had 1 year because the NCAA did away with graduate assistantships. So now I'm like, all right, now what do I do? Well, I found an opening in a little town called Bay Springs. And again, I had no idea Bay Springs and whatever. And so I ended up going down there, and I was going to be the baseball and softball coach. Softball was in the fall, and the baseball coach. Well, we had a ton of girls go out for softball, but we never could get enough birth certificates or physicals back then to have a team. So I ended up having to coach football along with baseball. So I did that. for a season, here I was, at Mississippi State, and we're playing in the Metrodome and SEC and hosting regionals, and the next thing I know, I'm at Bay Springs, Mississippi, playing Taylorsville, West. What was the guy? Jerry Boatner over at West.
Lauderdale.
Yes. Yeah.
Winningest coach in Mississippi history, I think, high school history.
Right. And, and here I'm starting out, and they're way better than us. And I think that year we had a hard time getting the older kids to come to practice. So I just said, look, if you're not going to come practice, you're not on the team. So I played with a bunch of young kids. That one year, I think I had starting 4 ninth graders, 2 8th graders, and a 7th grader. And I just figured we're just going to build this thing, from these young kids. And so it was a little bit of a struggle initially. I think Stringer beat us so bad. I think we played like 2 or 3 innings. That was when they were going on. I think they had 3 football championships, 3 basketball championships, and were working on their 3rd baseball championship. And they had guys that were going to Southern Miss to play football, and Jones County, and and here I am playing them with 7th and 8th graders. So I'll tell you a quick story. I don't remember the coach at Stringer, and they're killing us, right? Mm-hmm. And it's, 2nd inning. Well, they bunt. And now I'm mad, because they're bunting on us and whatever, and I'm yelling over at the coach. It wasn't very nice of me, I get, but I'm yelling over. Well, after the game gets over, he comes across and he says, Coach, I'm sorry about that. I'm just old basketball coach. We had told the kids to bunt the ball back to the pitchers to try to help us get some outs. So anyhow, then the next year comes, and we had worked on the field and built a dugout, and we had things I thought headed in the right direction. And about March of that second year, I get a call from the assistant coach at Southern Miss, who was a friend of mine, and he said, hey, look, we've had a coach leave, and if you can come here right now, the job's yours. If you can't wait until fall, you can't.
We need somebody now.
Somebody else, yeah. And it was a super hard decision for me. Those year and a half, 2 years, whatever, at Bay Springs were some of my fondest memories. I still tell stories about those softball girls and the baseball, and I really enjoyed my time there. We had met some very good friends. I stayed in a trailer on W.C. Jeffcoat's land, and his son, Craig, and his wife, Debbie, we're still friends with. They came to our wedding once my wife and I got married in Arkansas. And those times I wouldn't give them up for anything. I really enjoyed my time there. So anyhow, I ended up going to Southern Miss and coached there for the 2.5 years, or 3 years, I think, and ended up in the fall. That would have been probably the fall or winter of '95, I think. That's a long time ago. The Texas Tech had an opening, and I ended up going to Texas Tech and coached there. I just felt like it, especially at that point, Texas Tech was sort of, they were going to some regionals and that, and I thought, boy, this would be a heck of an opportunity. So I ended up, again, tough decision, but I was able to go to Southern Miss, or Texas Tech from Southern Miss, and spent the 96, 7, and 8 seasons there. And then in the fall or the springtime, early spring, it was about February, I had ended up, interviewed with 3 other teams, Cleveland, Seattle, and Minnesota. And didn't get any of those jobs. And, you're sort of bummed out and disappointed you didn't get any of those. And then I interviewed with the Dodgers, and they offered the job to assistant coach at University of Kentucky. And he ended up turning it down because he wanted to stay in college coaching. And then, so I was basically their second choice and ended up getting that. They offered it to me, and I took the job with the Dodgers at that point. That would have been 99, about February of 99. I had started with the Dodgers. The interesting part of the whole thing is the guy that was in Kentucky that turned the job down, he was, y'all remember that team? I think it was Birmingham Southern, maybe last year or 2 years ago, and they were playing in the World Series for their division, and the school was shut down.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was Jan Weisberg, and they shut the school down. They played in the championship, and now Jan Weisberg just took the job at Eastern Kentucky University. So 8 years ago, it's sort of taken a big turn. So he and I are friends. And so anyhow, I started in the fall or the February of 99 with the Dodgers. And I just completed my 27th draft with the Dodgers. I've been tricking them the whole time, so I haven't gotten fired during that 27 years. So it's been, the Dodgers obviously, are, one of the big franchises, obviously, in all of pro sports, and one of the iconic, brands out there. So it's been quite a run with the Dodgers, especially the last few years. We've had quite a bit of success during this past few years, and so it's been a good ride with the Dodgers. Years ago, I was sitting there, I was talking to a guy, and there was an old scout named Joe Campbell.
I know Joe. He was from Birmingham. He's
Yes, sir.
From Alabama, yeah.
Yes, sir.
We used to have a baseball clinic in Laurel called the Rod Gilbert Clinic, and Joe used to come to it every year.
Yeah. So this guy that I meet says to me, he says, do you know Joe Campbell? I said, oh, yeah, sure. And I had been with the Dodgers at this point probably about 18, 19, 20 years. And he says his niece or somebody knew, whatever. There was a family, so he knew him. So I said, oh, yeah, Joe Campbell, that's when those Dodgers scouts, they were 25 plus years and they all stayed around. It was a great organization and this and that. And then the next day I started thinking I thought, well, that's what they're going to start saying about me. That's that old Dodger scout that's been there all those years. So Joe Campbell was such a professional and a classy man, and he was very well known throughout the South, for sure.
Yeah, he used to go to a lot of clinics. They put on a clinic one time, Squeaky Parker, if you remember him, the old scout. He put on a clinic in Pensacola, and Joe would always be there. And I remember a monk guy with the Reds, so there was always some super scouts there. And of course,
Julian Mock.
Yeah,
Julian Mock. He was a scouting director for the Reds. That area down there was, unbelievable. You had Dan Jennings that started out as an area scout, and he ended up general manager, and he was the one, remember, with the Marlins, took over as the field manager there for a while. He's from that area. Squeaky Parker, Damon Iannelli, who works for the Rockies, he's in Jackson, Mississippi, he was the assistant coach actually that called me at Southern Miss and said, hey, and actually he got the job with the Rockies while we were working together at Southern Miss. So there's just Julian Mock, Squeaky. I mean, there's a plethora of wonderful baseball men that have lived down in the South down there.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough, Rod, I don't know if you know Rod very well. He was
Yes,
with the
sir.
Braves a long time. But anyway, he'd have that clinic, and he had it for like 10 or 12 years, and I was helping part of kind of publicize it every year. And so I got to know those guys really good. And Jennings actually was one of the rare, and I would say the rare, it's common now. He played both at Southern Miss and William Carey baseball when I was in college. So, I remember I reached out to him one time several years ago just to see where he was. And at that time, he was with, I believe, Washington.
Yes,
So,
he was with Washington.
So what is your role or your territories with the Dodgers?
So when I got the job, the area was going to be Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee. And they said you could live either in Lexington or Cincinnati. And I didn't care to live in Cincinnati, so we ended up living in Lexington. And then a couple of years later, moved just south of Lexington to Nicholasville, Kentucky. So I've had that area. At one point, they had added Indiana to the whole mix, which that was hard to do, those four states. And just because there were so many colleges, there's so many Division I colleges. I think at that point there was 33 Division I colleges, and you could say, well, yeah, but some of those small schools, don't matter. Well, Youngstown State had a first-round pick. Bowling Green had a first-round pick. Ohio U, so Ball State had first-round picks. So you couldn't just, not go and see them. So then in 2008, I started to cross-check the East Coast. So I was going anywhere from Puerto Rico all the way up into Canada, and then over all the way into Tennessee, down into Georgia, and then everything on the East Coast. And I did that for 1 year, and my kids were 7, 5, and 4. My nights in the hotel doubled, and I had always tried to round trip so much because my kids were young, so a 3-hour drive to Nashville and then turn around and drive 3-hour back wasn't a big deal. So my nights in the hotel doubled. It ended up, 130 nights or something, and I thought, that's 4 months of the year that I'm sitting in the hotel, and it just wasn't worth it for me. My family was more important. The kids were at a young age, and so I called the scouting director and I said, look, I'll do it if I have to, but I'd rather go back and do my area. And I ended up, it was lucky, we had a guy that was down south that was moving back to LA, and the guy that took my area was able to was from New Orleans, so he ended up going back there. So I ended up back in doing my area. I had half of Indiana and that other for a while. Now I don't have Indiana. I do have part of West Virginia, just sort of like Marshall, and just sort of a little sliver over there. But for the most part, it's been a fairly consistent area of Ohio, Kentucky, and Tennessee. And, when I started, everybody sort of thought that wasn't a very good area. The talent pool wasn't very good. Well, then you had Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Louisville, and Kentucky lately start really turning it on, and all of a sudden that area really was probably the most productive area in the whole country. I remember them doing a study one time, and it was like $31 million of draft bonuses came out of that area.
Wow.
which was the most of any area in the country. So it's been a really fruitful area. It didn't start that way, but these coaches that have turned these programs around, Dan McDonald at Louisville, who was at Ole Miss prior to that, Tim Corbin, everything that's gone on at Tennessee, and then Kentucky has gotten better. So, we've got, this is a good area, and I've really enjoyed scouting it and working it.
Hey, Marty, this is Marshall. I showed up. I told you early on I might show up until we're out of time. Well, my friend, we've exhausted our time today. I'll tell you what, we really appreciate you, and you give us a good understanding of what goes on and how what you do, how it works, and it requires a lot of time and a lot of work. And we thank you for your time today. I'm going to ask you to hold on just a second. Dale and I are going to take a break to hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be back with tonight's final episode of the final stanza of tonight's Brouhaha. See you right after the commercial break.
Phillips Building Supply in Laurel, your hometown building supply store since 1954. We are locally owned and pride ourselves on helping our customers find exactly what they need. From foundations to roofs to doors and windows, Phillips has it. For tools, hardware, lumber, and plywood, visit Phillips Building Supply.
Welcome back, everybody. I tell you what, Marty can go when you turn him loose, can't he?
He is. He's a good one, man. And listen, folks, we had to cut him off because he'd probably talked 2 hours to us today. So we may have him back.
Yeah, we get a repeat customer right there. A recreate customer. How do you like that? Anything else you want to say to the world out there today? You got anything on your mind before we can wrap this thing up and give the radio station back to Jamie?
Well, we talked a little bit about Ole Miss, but we need to say, Southern Miss is going to the bowl game in New Orleans. Mississippi State gets to go to a bowl game in North Carolina because a lot of teams dropped out. Baylor, Kansas State, Notre Dame, out State. They said they didn't want to go to bowl, so that limited. It brought Southern Mississippi State up, even though they had a losing record. They had a really good academic record, so they get to qualify on that. And of course, a lot of people probably heard yesterday, Will Hall, former Southern Miss coach, and Bobby Hall's son, was promoted to head coach at the University of
Tulane.
So we'll have to be cheering for Tulane too, unless they play one of our teams.
There you go.
But anyway.
Dale, appreciate you, brother.
Yes,
and,
sir.
I tell you what, you pulled another one. You caught another real nice fish on the line, brother. That was a good one.
Got lucky.
Got lucky. Hey, I'd rather be lucky than good. I don't know who said that, but let's go with it. Okay. Listen, thanks everybody for listening in on us tonight. Remind you that you can follow us during the week on our Facebook page at the Brouhaha. We like to post stuff on there for you. You can check and see maybe a little topic or two you can fight over a little bit, and then of course all of our shows are cataloged for you on our YouTube channel, where you can listen to them on demand. But for now, it's time to say goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, Dale.
Goodbye, everybody. See you next week for more of the Brouhaha. Hey, Jamie, get us out of here.
You've been listening to the Brouhaha with Del McKee and Marshall Wood. Heard Tuesday evening, 6 p.m. on WABO. For more of the Brouhaha, follow us during the week on Facebook and WABO.